When we were kids, we all believed we were a part of some kind of story, some kind of adventure. And then at some point we grew up and we grew out of those stories. And then we got into the normal routine of everyday life. The same old thing every single day. Wake up, eat breakfast, drink coffee, head to work. For some, it's to drop your kids off at school and then go into the office. And it's the same routine every single day. And there's something in us that feels like we are missing out on something big. Starting this Sunday, we are beginning a brand new sermon series looking at the parables of Jesus, the stories that Jesus told. A parable is simply a short story with a point. And this was one of Jesus' preferred teaching styles that he used. He would use the everyday stuff of a Jew living in first century Palestine to teach some of the most important, jaw-dropping truths the world has ever heard. He would talk about vines and work and parenting. He would talk about the birds and the trees and the seeds. He would use the everyday stuff that people were familiar with to drive home a point through a story. Jesus, whenever he taught to the crowds or even his opponents, he would always use stories. Why would Jesus explain the stories to his disciples and leave the crowd and the opponents hanging in the mystery of what that story meant? Here's my conviction. My conviction is stories enter the human heart and the human brain like no other truth can. It's a way of getting behind closed doors and speaking to a person in the most intimate way possible. And for the disciples, he didn't just simply tell them stories and then leave them hanging, because they were a part of the stories that Jesus was telling. Jesus was inviting them to see themselves in the story as not simply passive participants, but active people in a story that God was telling. Jesus isn't telling us stories that would be memorable, that would be passed on for the ages, though that is true. Jesus is telling us parables, these short stories, because he is inviting us, you and me, to see ourselves as being a part of God's larger story that he is writing. So if you feel like you have missed something big, what you need to do is to capture what was lost. And that's not that you are a part of a story, it's that God is writing you in his story, and that is captured best through the stories Jesus told. Join us this Sunday as we look at some of the most life-changing truth jam-packed into Jesus' stories.